Good evening, Professor. My name is Jorge Montaño, and the objective of this video is to outline the similarities and differences between teaching a language and assessment. I would like to start with teaching a language. So, what is teaching a language? I think teaching a language is a process of teaching a given language, usually a second language. Now that we're studying English as a second language, we're going to focus on that. Whereas assessment is to test the abilities obtained or the goals that have been achieved in a specific course by students. Now, what is taught in a language, obviously, is second language. What is assessed here in this aspect, then of course it will be the second language based on the objectives that have been proposed prior to starting a course. I would like to move on to the similarities between teaching a language and assessment. One of the first one is that in both language teaching and assessment, the four skills and sub-skills are very important parts here, because that's what you want to teach. You want to teach students to be better at reading, listening, speaking, and writing, and that's what you are going to assess as well. Another big similarity, although we don't always take this into consideration, is the fact that we will be culturally enriched. Why do I say so? I will say this because it's not a secret, but there's always this kind of extra attraction for the English teacher compared to other teachers who teach other subjects. And this is because you might know how to add, how to divide, how to multiply, but if you know another language, then it will always be a culture shock for students. But obviously it's not taken in a negative way, but it's taken in a positive way. And not only that, but the way we react to things, the contents that you learn during the course, and even the way that you assess, which is completely different to the normal assessment done by other teachers, teachers from other subjects, then is completely different. So that's why I will say culture has a lot to do here in teaching a language and assessment. Another similarity is that both teaching a language and assessment can be done presentially or online. Now, I myself have been working as a teacher for more than 12 years, and I work as well as an exam tutor, and I work as an examiner for international exams. And based on this, I can tell you that students study online and they study presentially, obviously now because of the pandemic. Remote teaching is option number one. But interestingly enough, assessment has also been conducted online. For instance, there is the home edition for the TOEFL test, which was run from May to August or October, I think. So this comes to show that assessment can be also done online. It has been a difficult enterprise, but they have succeeded in doing this, and also teachers in normal assessments as well. We have been able to conduct different exams or different tests so that we can know how much students have learned. So teaching and assessment, presential and online, are obviously on the table as a way of not stopping teaching by any means. Another similarity is that objectives are built up prior the whole course, and also assessment. Now, I won't be able to know what the students, what I want the students to learn if I don't know my objectives. I will not be able to assess if I don't know my objectives. So then again, this is something that should be done prior to the actual course. So that's another similarity. Another similarity that we'll also like to share with you is that in both teaching a language and assessment, tasks are used. Obviously, the both of them have different objectives, which is something that I will get into details later on with the differences. And last but not least, I would like to say that teachers and students take part in language teaching and assessment. So this is another obvious similarity, but then again, it's a very important aspect to consider, because no teaching could be done if we didn't have either of these subjects. Now, I would like to move on to the differences. I think we're going back to tasks. Uh, the objective of tasks in terms of language teaching is so that learning takes place. So tasks foster language learning. So this is the very first step in developing a second language. Whereas tasks in assessment is for the teacher, for the examiner to gather information so that we know how much students have progressed, so that we know about students' performances, either individually or in groups. So they are a good indicator to see how much they know and how much they have learned. Another big difference between teaching and assessment is that teaching a language in terms of tasks given or what happens during the class, teachers are always there to help. They can take the role of teachers. Sometimes they take the role of facilitators. Sometimes they take the roles of guides. They will always be there to assist the students in any way possible. Whereas in assessment, teacher is not a teacher anymore. It could be an examiner, and all they have to do here is to guide the students or to help the students to develop the tasks, but they will not help the students in any way to improve their scores. So basically, the line is drawn there because examiners, which is the actual name, will not be able to help the students if they have any questions about the contents of the exams. Obviously, when you're teaching a language, then the tasks are more flexible. Um, in fact, this is when you actually diagnose or identify students who have learning difficulties, students whose level of English might not be the best compared to other students. Here you can group them, you can have them work individually, you can let them be creative. Whereas in assessment, it is a more serious scenario in which students have to consider different parameters so that they can work on the task successfully. For instance, they need to consider time limit, they need to consider what to do where. They should know when to speak, they should know when to listen, they should know when to write, they should know when to read, they should know what to do, what not to do, and what material to use. For instance, in some exams, they are allowed to use pens or pencils if it's computer based as well. So that's another big difference. Assessment is more demanding than language teaching. Finally, when it comes to grading, uh, when you're teaching a language in a class, there should always be a chance for students to redeem. That's why we have makeup tests, makeup activities, supplementary activities that we have at university as well. And I think these things help the students to gain confidence, to actually know the mistakes that they've made and acknowledge them, and then, of course, try to improve. Whereas in assessment, as I always tell my students, you only get one shot, because of course, you will have to get prepared again. Take the example of Olympic Games, for example. I always tell them, look, um, competitors train for 4 years to go to the big event, and then you see your results where the judges, where your rivals are competitors. There will not be a helping hand there. um, so grading will be as honest as possible, and there are no any kind of emotional links between the student and the examiner, just as these things don't happen in big events. So I always try to have this kind of imaginary situation based on what they do in class compared to major competitions worldwide known. Um, I will say this is all I can say about uh, these two elements that come hand in hand when it comes to teaching. I will say both have to be taken into consideration just as seriously. And I will say my recommendation is always train students to know when they are learning and when they are getting prepared for assessment. Sometimes we might get confused and we might think that our teacher will always be there to help us. But if we are always there helping them, then students will never become independent. And one way to show how independent the students are in terms of use, in terms of level of English, in terms of scaling in common European framework reference levels, I think is to let them go solo, let them go by themselves. I think one of these ways is that they start being assessed as soon as possible, so that they can actually know how to deal with these situations. And actually, in some high schools, the students do international exams when they are in second grade or third grade. But there are other schools where students, not even teachers, do this kind of exams. So I will say that that's my recommendation, to always have students ready for learning, open for learning, but always to be conscientious about doing assessment. Thank you very much. That's all from me. I hope this video was useful and was fructuous as well. And I will see you next time. Thank you.